by the way, Bruntz, like, are you getting a feel on kind of the long-term or short-term implications of 60 some odd guys? I mean, they had some fellas there of the return so far. Is this going to be kind of a slow burn?
Well, I think the thing that here's what stood out to me, and I think I might have said this to you when we were standing there. Like, I don't remember that ever having that many like guys with offers and like legit recruitable prospects from the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri at one game.
Oh yeah, you did. You did say that.
Like it was like every guy that was going through, it was like, oh, here's a 27 lineman from Missouri. Here's a wide receiver from Kansas that's got Kansas State, Kansas, and offers like that. I mean, that stood out to me. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's the recruiting calendar is so screwy now from what it has been, where there's focus on guys like Chase Lofton that are 25, but I mean, Nebraska is very, very much into the 26, 27, and 28 classes. They had a couple 28s there from Kansas that had offers already. So it's they're working ahead, and I mean that's kind of what you have to do now. So we'll see, but I mean, getting guys on campus, as sophomores for games, I mean, there's a lot of benefit to that because you've started that relationship. Obviously, the game didn't go how you would have wanted it to, but kind of getting that first taste of the atmosphere and hopefully getting them back in the spring for junior days and things like that. I mean, that's the goal. So, I mean, it was a really impressive list, and it was a 2:30 kick, which helps you a little bit, but I mean, for the number of guys that they got for a 2:30 game, I thought was pretty impressive.
Bruntz, we've seen already our guy Coach Rule hopping on the old PJ to visit some recruits during the bye week here.
Yeah, he left yesterday around noon for Arizona.
Yeah, went out and see Malcolm Simpson, or was on the way to see Malcolm Simpson. I think he's on his way to see Jackson Cantwell as well. Like, is there any guys that you're hearing are just super high priority for him to get out and see, either to try and continue a relationship with a guy like Jackson Cantwell or to shore up a relationship when you've got some new suitors in town for a guy like Malcolm Simpson?
Yeah, well, I mean, Simpson's a big one. And there's a few guys in the class that you kind of need to make sure are solid. And, with the changes in the recruiting calendar, I mean, this is the chance that you're going to have to get out and see a lot of those guys. And, Simpson's interesting. I mean, you've got Texas hanging around, USC's hanging around. I think in that situation, the fact that Nebraska was first to offer and came in really heavy right away, I think that's kind of, been really valuable in Nebraska, kind of keeping him in the fold as things have kind of blown up in his recruitment. I mean, he was obviously under-recruited for what he is. He's just kind of a freak athlete that I think Nebraska feels like they just have to teach to play defensive line. And, they're starting with a pretty good canvas there at least. So, it's a mix. I mean, you've got guys like Simpson you got to get out and see now to make sure that, the stove's still hot there. And then, if you can, you go see Cantwell, you go see your priority guys in 2026, because, I mean, you're probably going to have some of those guys making spring decisions, and you need to kind of keep that going. I mean, with Cantwell too, he's a guy that I think Nebraska's in it a little bit more than maybe probably what's being acknowledged nationally about where they stand. And part of that is, Matt Rule is very, very, very involved in that recruitment. So yeah, we'll see. But I mean, this is, I think everybody's kind of trying to figure out how to work this recruiting calendar. Because before you'd be doing the dinner circuit, right? You'd be in living rooms in December. You'd be posing around the Christmas tree, which is always one of the great parts of that, was kind of seeing what everybody's got going on with their holiday decorations. And then, now you're kind of having to hustle a little bit while, oh, by the way, you're having to still game plan for games, and, the portal stuff's coming up in December too. So it's a busy time that's kind of gotten even busier, I think, with the way that the calendar is now.
I'm going to get to the new coaching hires in a second, because we had a caller that had a pretty good question, or a hypothetical that I'm going to ask you about. But real quick to put a bow on this one, when you look at kind of the recruiting and the lay of the land and the landscape here locally with media and the fan base and the coaching staff, were you surprised or pretty spot on to hear Coach Rule say, we've got guys basically chomping at the bit to come here and lining up to come here? I don't worry about that part of it. He said that with supreme confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, well, I think sometimes, people get caught up in, immediate results, and there's part of that plays into recruiting. But I mean, it's relationships, and it always will be. I guess there's NIL now that also is part of that, making sure that looks right for everybody. But I don't know that recruitment shift as dramatically as maybe you think with a game or two where you don't play well. I think kids sometimes understand that sometimes you're building or you're trying to get things where you want it to be, and stuff like that's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that there's, he says there's guys that are still wanting to go there. I mean, I think there's guys and really talented players that Nebraska is still trending with in spite of the last 3 games. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like at Nebraska. You just got to get the piece, on the field more consistent. But it's in a lot of these situations, it's 2-3 year relationships, and I think sometimes guys don't get wrapped up so much in what happens between the lines when they're visiting Nebraska on a particular day. I mean, I think you kind of have to look at the whole picture a little bit more if you're a recruit, and I think that's kind of what's happening there.
Bruntz, I'm going to give you just strictly a hypothetical. This is definitely not about a team that exists currently and is happening right now. What about like a 10-game sample size where you start ranked in the top 10 and then you end up going like 1-9 to start a season? How does that affect recruiting?
Is that a
hypothetical? Hypothetically.
That's a hypothetical. I don't know. I mean, it's
because like that has to be part of the Chase Lofton thing, right? Like, if we're being honest.
I think Chase Lofton just wants a healthy environment.
That's fine.
Like, I think he looks at everything in its totality, right? Like,
you don't look at Florida State as a super healthy. I mean, the hypothetical.
I don't know how he feels about like the fan base and stuff, but I think he does want to. I think he clearly wants to know what environment he's putting himself in.
Sure.
Well, and I mean, there's also, I mean, in your strict hypothetical, there's hypothetically distance is probably a factor there too. Like, how far are you willing to go from home for a situation that's hypothetically precarious? I think that's part of it.
I bet he's willing. I bet he's willing to get away if he really wants to get away. I bet he doesn't think about distance. If he really wants to get away, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, if where you're going is maybe not as attractive as it was.
What you'd be willing to put up with.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a good point.
I think that's maybe a piece of it, but I don't know. I mean, I think the relationship piece of it's big in that hypothetical. I think
I'd go to Alaska if they paid me enough.
Fairbanks is beautiful this time of year.
I get your analogy, Bruntz. Yes, I could be miserable for a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
But kind of.
Yeah, so that's true. No, I mean, I think it's always evolving, right? Like, what does a hypothetical 1-9 situation look like for a coaching staff, and how's that going to change things? I mean, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not always kind of evaluating, especially if the data points coming in on a recruitment are changing. You know what I mean? Like, I just, especially for somebody that's hypothetically that talented.
Bruntz, fast forward. We got a question this morning I thought was pretty interesting where it was basically implied that Coach Rule's probably been thinking about this. He's not kind of a knee-jerk guy. Had to put some plans in place to pull it off, but said, he kind of looks at it as a release valve, a pressure release valve for some of the coaches currently on staff. Mitch Sherman floated a similar idea yesterday. We had a listener that wanted to get our thoughts on. It's just probably been either thought about, talked about, and he could look at it as a way of maybe lightening the load for those kind of being scrutinized. How did it land with you? Is that plausible?
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I think it probably lowers the temperature a little bit in the discussion about things. I also don't know that. I don't know right now if I would be feeling particularly comfortable over there at all.
If you're anyone,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
and not just the play caller. I mean, I think that you're at the point now, and when your head coach says he's willing to do anything to get things over the top, I mean, I believe that. So yeah, I mean, I think the definitely the conversation has shifted somewhat this week with that stuff coming out. I think that's probably a good idea for growth and maybe kind of doing some different things. But I mean, I also wouldn't necessarily see that addition as like, people are off the hook or things are, I do think it's going to be a pretty fine-tooth comb type off season over there with how they're doing things and who's doing what. So, yeah, I think in the immediate it probably helps a little bit. But I do think they're going to be pretty thorough over there and kind of looking at how things are going and why this November has felt at least started out kind of feeling a little bit similar to last November too.
Bruntz, do you give any credence at all to it seems like, I don't know how large of a section of the fan base this is, but a section of the fan base that says, hey, bringing somebody in at this point and actually hiring them kind of feels desperate. Does that hold any weight for you?
No, not really. I don't think so. I mean, I think when things happen kind of affects that, but I don't know that now I would say that it feels that way. I mean, if you're bringing somebody in to truly just have another look at things, I think that's pretty smart. Get some more people in the room. I guess on the one hand, I don't say like, okay, well, you need to make a change. And then when you bring somebody in to kind of look at things a little bit differently and have maybe a voice in some things like that doesn't strike me as desperate. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think you probably have the right as a coach to course correct a little bit if something doesn't seem to be working. So it doesn't hold much water with me. I don't think. I think it's smart to bring people in, and it was obviously somebody's opinion that he valued enough to bring him up to go to a wrestling match with him. So, it's not like this was a complete like out of left field type relationship or something that kind of popped up in the last 3 days after UCLA. Like it feels like there's enough discussion and back and forth there that it doesn't feel knee jerky to me.
So, Bruntz, when you're in its totality, do you think we're overthinking like the specifics, like, oh, who's going to call plays, or what kind of offense did Holgerson run, or wow, what did Phil Snow mean? Like, what if it's just? I even have a good example of what if it's just, but sometimes it can just provide a level of comfort from a tutorial standpoint on a multitude of things. It could even be day to day. How patient will you allow, or do you think we need to be to see exactly kind of what it is that he wants from these individuals?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear it from Matt Rule what he wants to. We don't. I don't know that. Like he has not said that publicly. Like what he wants wants this to be, whether it's
knowing him, he probably hasn't said it privately either, except to the two guys that he has to come in.
So I mean, that's the thing. They were on campus on Monday. We heard from Rule on Monday. He didn't mention that. So I mean, I'll be very eager Monday to kind of see what this, the idea is here with this. But I don't know. I mean, it's a different. It's at least offensively, I feel like it's a little bit more of like, okay, here's some things that you might be able to do, might be able to tweak. Like I'm not expecting like wholesale offensive changes or anything like that going to USC. I mean, maybe you have a few wrinkles here or there. Maybe you teach perimeter blocking a little bit differently or something like that, because that's been, an area where Holgerson's coached a lot in the past, coaching wide receivers and, stuff like that. Maybe an extra eye or two on, a player that maybe needs to be out there more, or somebody needs to be out there less. I mean, that's the value of, maybe somebody like Phil Snow that's been through it a lot and kind of knows, what a Matt Rule type player looks like. So that's what I'm thinking it's going to be. I mean, we'll see, at least in the immediate, we'll see what kind of the view is beyond that. But yeah, I mean, I'm eager to hear more from Matt Rule on it, because it's, certainly, I don't think it's, if it was just somebody that was, just a name, but I mean, these are two, Phil Snow is very large in the Matt Rule orbit. And certainly Dana Holgerson's a name in himself.
Bruntz, are we underselling the fact that he's going to be gone for 2 to 3 days minimum, and we're going to kind of this changeover, or not changeover, but like advisory process? And my man is out here recruiting his brains out. Like, everybody pretty much must have their directives, right?
I mean, you think Holgerson?
How about he low-key dropped on Monday, hey, I trust my guys that are here. I'm going to be out recruiting Wednesday, Thursday. And we didn't even know what was coming.
You think you think Holgerson's kind of doing the Captain Phillips? Like, look at me. I'm the captain now.
No, I actually don't. But I mean, that's like, how's that land, MB?
No, it's funny. It's like, I don't know, like, it's like as a parent when you got your two kids and you're like, okay, I'm gonna, here you are, I got you set up here. I'm gonna go in the other room and you guys just make this work. Like, that's, I'm sure everybody has I'm sure that there's very clear directives about what people are doing and who's doing what. I have zero doubts in my mind about that.
Mommy and I are going out. Domino's is on the stove.
I'm going to go in the other room. Don't pummel each other. And
the duplex TV blocks are out on the streets. Don't change Don't change the channel.
I don't have kids, but I feel like it's when I leave the dogs out and I'm like, please don't poop on the floor while I'm gone.
Yeah. It's like, well, depending on the day, it's like, hey, I got to do 25 minutes of radio here. I need you two to not kill each other in the next. And then, like, inevitably somebody else comes in the room and they've got to go to the bathroom, which has happened when I've been on radio. Yeah, it's like that. Like, you're just getting everything set up and hoping for the best.
I suppose you're right. I suppose with kids, you're hoping they don't poop on the floor either. So I guess it's the same thing.
Well, when you're on a show and the kid loudly announces into the room and says, I've got to poop, and
hey, it's better than the alternative that he didn't tell you, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Hey, appreciate the heads up, champ.
Is this like a right now situation, or I got a couple minutes? No, now? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Big parent energy.
Always right now. Yeah, always right now.
Bruntz, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you later.
Yep, see you guys.
Thanks, Bruntz.
That's Michael Bruntz, Husker247, Dad of the Year.
Dudes are hilarious.
Big handshake energy. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.